Hello, everyone. This is the Ops section cross-stage ThinkBig for the 8th of July. And today's theme is GitLab CI critique. We had a couple of suggested reads that were suggested for the session on limitations or problems with modern CI and GitLab CI. And our goal with this conversation is to explore potential problems with the way our CI works and point out possible solutions for the future. All right. So anyone wants to get started on their thoughts on the problem space and the team that we have?
Just doing a quick refresh as it's been a while since I read through those pre-reads, sorry.
No problem.
Same. I actually haven't had time to pre-read the article, so I'm looking through it right now.
So do we want to tackle some of the problems that are described in these pre-reads and talk through those first?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. If I'm not mistaken, it was Darren who suggested them. So I was hoping he could have some input. Oh, there's Michael as well. But yeah, so I'll kick it off then. Hey, Michael, how's it going? Specifically speaking of to be continuous, I think it's really interesting how they highlighted some issues in templating and importing different pre-made pieces into GitLab CI, and I think some of that is already the direction of our pipeline authoring team is going towards. But I think it's really interesting how they built an open source extension almost to GitLab in a way that very, very closely matches what our teams are thinking as well. Do you folks think it's interesting to make this discussion async, perhaps, as we perhaps read through these, or just wait for more contributions from other people as well, and do this back and forth async?
Possibly. One of my immediate takeaways from reading these articles is that I want to ask, like, both of them talk about. It's not crystal clear to me what causes things to be super complex over time, and perhaps if we can answer that question, we can figure out how to make things less complex. Because like they talk about, YAML files, all the things you have to do, and it takes a lot of skills and knowledge to actually set things up. And we are working on some of those items, but it's like it's still not crystal clear to me what are all the pieces that contributes to the complexity. It'd be interesting to have someone more knowledgeable list them out the problems that people are encountering. Anyway, those are my immediate thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have that much experience with the CI, especially being a designer, but from my experience in past organizations that have used GitLab CI specifically, it can be really hard, especially in a large organization where different teams have different stacks and different ways of working, to just find the entry point, right? How do I start a new project? And YAML, like, just say, oh, just find a template and write the YAML, unless you have a structured place where you can find these templates, and a structured set of instructions for people to start, or at least copy this and fork from there. It can be really hard to get started. But that's my experience. I'm not sure that's something universal as well.
At a previous org that I worked at, one of the projects that the CI/CD team, for lack of a better term, did was create a scaffold. So it was in part a scaffolding of here's a new project, here's a new repository. But part of that workflow of creating it was picking, hey, am I building a Go project? Am I building a JavaScript project? Because those were our two big languages. And then where am I deploying to? Am I deploying into data center? Am I deploying into AWS? And if you went down that path of AWS, you could start to pick a few more things. And that would start to cobble together what your build pipeline and deploy pipeline had to look like dynamically, so that at the end of 2 minutes, you had a fully fledged project that the pipeline would run. It would spin up a hello world that the teams for Go and JavaScript had put together, so that you had code, you knew it would compile, you knew it would build, you knew it could deploy even out to at least the staging clusters, and you were ready to go. And that solved a big problem for them of always reinventing the wheel, either forking something, but always running that risk of this project is 2 years old and this is not how we deploy anymore. And it doesn't have all of the things that we need for compliance, where there was one place where that was kept up to date. And that solved a big problem for us. But I don't know, is that doesn't seem like it's the problem that's described in these articles, so much as hey, I need a template to get started with a new project.
Yeah, I would say from my experience, I really struggled to get started with GitLab CI years ago. Just to like say, hey, this is like, what do I want to run? Do I want to run a test? Yeah, it's okay. Is it Go? Is it C++? Is it Python? Is it PHP? Whatever language. We have like 100 languages we need to cover. And then it's something you also want to look into, how to integrate a unit test. And after a while, you figure out, oh, there's a JUnit integration in GitLab, and there is a regex you need to pass. And I've built trainings for that to educate everyone. But still, it's a learning experience. And you also need to invest time into refactoring the YAML, which is actually like CI/CD as code, because it's not perfect yet. You start off with like 1 job, 2 jobs, and then you figure out how to use extends, which is, in my opinion, super complicated if you're not into that. And then it goes on and say, hey, I'm at the CI stage now. What is CD actually? Is that now deploying in production? Is that, do I need Kubernetes for that? So there's lots of friction involved, I would say, in the process, and you really don't know where to start. And one of the things I would love to see is sort of maybe AI or machine learning things. You analyze the source code, and based on that, you make a proposal of saying, hey, maybe not use the template, because the template is just like the first step, but suggesting of saying, hey, this is a CI/CD stage or a pipeline. This has been used in different other custom environments and stuff like that. and it proposes something which is ready to use, because the template on its own might not be ready to use yet, because the job is basically a wrapper for executing something. Is it like a Docker container? Is it a script you want to call? Can I embed that into the YAML? I'm not a fan of multi-line bash in YAML wrappings. I rather write my own script, but for that I need to learn maybe scripting. If there is a mechanism which provides that, or provides me with a Docker container or a container which I can just use, like the Terraform integration, for example, this gives me like the tool chain embedded into the template, and I can just include a template and it works similar to all the DevOps, but more in an abstracted way of, hey, there is Rust, and Rust is super new, and maybe there is not much knowledge around how to like best practice in that regard. But it could detect it and say, hey, maybe you want to read this guide, maybe you want to start using this template. And by the way, here is from GitLab provided in the registry a container images you could use for getting there. But it's the problem in the product can be it's too much. And the second article mentions that with Java, it's not just Java, it's like different dependencies, it's web development, it's backend development, you have a database backend. There's so many different dependencies. It's really hard to focus on and also say, this is something we want to support, and this is something we have knowledge in our support team, in our product team, engineering and whatnot. So I understand the frustration in these articles, but on the other side, I don't really know how to solve it, because you need to address what the majority of our users and customers use, and if it's not there, we might be adding it or writing a blog post or a how-to article. But yeah, it's a combination of the configuration language and the platform, the tool stack around it, providing ready-to-use container images, I think could be one of the solutions for that.
So it sounds like potentially there's a problem with, I wrote a bunch of code and I'm ready to put it into a CI/CD type pipeline to deploy it, or automate the build and deploy. I don't know where to start though, other than I know it's Java, but the Java template just doesn't give me enough, or the Gradle template just doesn't give me enough to get going. Instead, I want a more robust solution, but not clippy, to walk me through, because there's questions I don't know answers to potentially. That I want that tool to figure out for me, like some of the dependency stuff and some of the things that I don't know I need yet to deploy to the place that I want to deploy. Does that sound like the problem that you described, Michael?
Yeah, I would say so. And I kept thinking around auto DevOps and abstracting things. I also want to keep control. So I don't want to have like the black magic box, which does something. I still want to, I want to model my pipeline in a visual way. But on the other side, I also want to use straight YAML or whatever configuration language is used. And I also want to see like the steps involved of one example in my past was we were creating RPM or Debian packages, and therefore we needed a build chain inside a container image at some point, because we didn't want to reinstall the dependencies all the time, making the pipeline slower. But this was a learning process. In the end, another dependency, another requirement could be that you can do it offline outside of CI/CD, but that's like a second problem or second feature request. The main thing is when there's a problem with the CI/CD pipeline, you want to analyze it and fix it fast, and also understand the components in there. So it shouldn't be like you have 50 stages and then 10 jobs in each, and then it's like, I have no idea. The second job of the linting stage failed. okay, but what is hidden inside? So, for example, analyzing the GitLab product CI/CD pipelines often is hard to immediately see what the error is. And I think getting an opinionated template of tooling, scripts, is potentially something users want, and it's not just tied to the YAML configuration, which is awesome to create parent and child pipelines and multi-project pipelines and includes and everything else, but more of the convenience things of build this Java thing. I know Java a little, but I'm not confident in it. So, and the last thought around this is make this extensible in a way like it is now, so that people can reverse engineer it and add their own stuff again. Because if you build the closed ecosystem, potentially nobody will be using it, or maybe not being able to extend it and just saying, hey, I'm using a different product.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael, which aspects or features that we currently have on CI/CD, on CI specifically, sorry, you see that are pointing to these solutions already, in the sense of like, in which ways are we already doing this job that we could invest more in?
I think the pipeline editor is a huge investment into making it more easy, more approachable, especially with the side slider, which instructs you, gives you some insights and some pointers, and also the default template. But my vision is that it's not just a template which is read from a file somewhere. It's an opinionated template already of saying, hey, you have Python code in there. Let's propose something around Python. And it's not just insert the script in there, but it needs lots of effort. But we have a pre-built tool chain for you right now. This is the container image, or this is like how it's being done. And this works for most of the cases. Let's say, I don't know, 80%, 90%, something around that. The other thing which works really great is the built-in CI templates and the possibility to add your own custom templates to it. I think that's a premium feature, to add your own custom templates. But in the end, it's a convenient way to do it, I would say, and it's easy. Well, easy is a bold word. It's a good way to follow along of saying, hey, the GitLab developers are adding these templates, and I can like build my own templates based on them. I think what things we might be doing better is like the script section which we're using in our jobs to do something could be more generalized, or could be using, I know it's impossible, highly likely, but it could, the tool chain could be more generalized, or more like you can use the same shell script or the same Ruby script or whatever to build something. Because I think right now, most oftentimes you need to create the build job, you need to copy paste what's in the CLI or what's somewhere else. And if this is already there, this would help. One of the things I kept like, I contributed to was the Docker CI template. Mostly because I was using the main branch already, and it only referred to the old master branch. And so we found a way to make it more extensible and saying, okay, we're not using two jobs before that, but just one job, and this is a nice template. Now we need to make sure that users find it actually and keep using it. So the documentation needs some improvements, and making it more discoverable. Like thinking of a, I don't know, marketplace sounds a little odd, but making it more visible in the interface, but also from an automation perspective, making it easy to deploy that using the API or using, I don't know, the Python GitLab module or Ansible or something else to automatically build the CI/CD pipeline, because you don't want to click and write YAML if you want to generate it. I have too many ideas, but I think in the way we keep pushing on the pipeline editor and adding also new API features like the linting and the merged YAML and so on, benefits the platform.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michael. I think it's definitely, it makes sense for our CI teams to keep investing in the paradigm that we have. So making it easier to write YAML and add more suggestions, since that's what we have. But I think it's also interesting how how these articles approach the idea that we should have more structured sections, right? Where scripts are not necessarily just wrappers to something that's running in there, but we actually have semantics defining what is running on each stage, and these semantics are recognized by GitLab, and the system works differently based on what each piece means, right? If it's a deploy job, then it works in a certain way. If it's a test job, then it works in a separate way, and it doesn't depend only on what's running inside the scripts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. Because also we think of a CI/CD pipeline of a queue of jobs, and these are executed, and they have a defined scope depending on the stage, or you are defining the stage where they are in. And sometimes the stage doesn't make sense, or you are lazy and keep everything in the test stage, but the job does something different. So this could be like a detection of proposing the best practices. I just kept thinking of like finding a different way to create a CI/CD job and registering it. So like I'm thinking of a little bit of IoT and pops up, you're throwing in something, and then basically the scheduler or the runner says, hey, I'm executing this. And for some reason, it already defined the scope where it's been running in, because you uploaded it, or you pushed it to a specific target group, which is could be the staging group, and this does more of it defines it where it's executed. It says, okay, I have specific groups or zones which define what the current scope of the job execution is, and not just the stage where this has been defined in. It doesn't really comply with what we have built now with the YAML configuration, but it's an idea of, I think other CI systems follow that approach, or at least have the idea around that. Or is it more CD? I think I've seen it with Jenkins X, or was it Screwdriver? Something in that regard of not too static dependent pipelines, but more dynamic. But again, I think if it's getting too dynamic, it gets too complex for starters to begin with. So two ways to do it right is also not good. That creates friction in the product. But it could be an interesting way of saying, hey, maybe in 5 years we are No, I cannot say that loud. We are deprecating the current configuration, and we migrate to a new model of dynamic CI/CD. But I'm not sure if the market is ready for that. Because the one of the fears is migration means work, and this is like unpaid work or like time you need to invest, and this oftentimes is like people are staying on the old version because they don't want to migrate to the new format.
Right. I think when we're talking about CI as well, a lot of these features don't necessarily target the same users. So basic templating may help some subset of users or users that are less used to working with CI and YAML, while dynamic pipelines might help more advanced users. But at the end of the day, especially in a big project or I'm on a repo, they're all in the same interface. They're all in the same big YAML file, right? So it's harder to provide different levels of assistance and experience to different users that may be on the same interface.
Oh,
You had a little choppy on the recording.
no worries. Yeah, that's definitely true. With experienced users wanting to, for example, to generate code for the child pipelines, which is currently possible, and this is something which blows your mind because it involves maybe some bash scripting and some other scripting, where you do not even think about from like the beginner's perspective of saying parent-child pipelines. I don't need that. I have no idea how this works. So I think it's definitely worthwhile to define the target group or the persona who's been using it and focusing on the beginner, which we are currently doing with the pipeline editor and the templates and everything else around it, but also allowing advanced users to go there. And also I've seen people expanding on auto DevOps. So I haven't been using it in my past job. I kept learning it while here. And I've seen that, for example, the auto build feature is being used by, I think, by archive.org, which was a HashiTalks talk a while ago, where they just keep using the detection of the source code and then building it with Heroku-ish build, and running the web application in a container, for example. If we find, or if we like expand on this idea of saying, hey, we have like auto CI template, CI platform suggestions, something around that, this could be interesting. I don't know how we can technically build that, but it would be interesting to say, okay, what is the most used language where we just want to go ahead? Because yeah, okay, C++ is a little more complicated, but maybe start with Go or with Ruby, and provide a best practice pipeline, and maybe not as a whole or as in full, but as an assistant guidance. I don't know if users would like that. Maybe some, because if you're seeing all the stages in the pipeline, it's overwhelming and you don't know where to start again. So like guiding you from now we are running a syntax check on the code, we're running the code quality, then to building the code, and later on thinking around how we can deploy it. If you don't have Kubernetes configured, okay, maybe you want to add AWS, you want to, like, this is described in the second blog post as well, how do you deal actually with Terraform and provisioning AWS or multi-cloud or something else? This is like, gets really complex. And providing the best suggestion there is super hard. On the other side,
I think offering templates is the first step, right? To provide these more specific and more detailed suggestions. So it's like the basic step. Oh, you're using Ruby. Here's a Ruby template. But even before talking about AI and ML, I think there's a huge opportunity in personalization just by better understand the use case for each user and then drilling down on the specifics of those use case, right? So just by knowing, okay, you're using Ruby. All right. Are you in a monorepo or multi-repo? Yes or no? Are you deploying to AWS, to GCP, or to a DC? Just by drilling down those decision trees, we can already make much more specific suggestions that are not necessarily like each one of these will generate a full template, but even like at some point suggest blocks of functionality, blocks of code to go into the YAML. And from what I see being designed and prototyped on the CI pipeline authoring team, I think that's the direction they want to go, but it's a vast landscape, so it's hard to get there.
And that's why I was saying like focus on 2 to 3 languages or ecosystems around there and say, hey, what are the best practices we want to provide? Is it just like you build the code or you test the code? Is there something which we can do in not only providing the CI templates as in YAML, but also like have a repository or have a location which provides you with a skeleton of building Ruby code, packaging Ruby code, using the same ideas around creating a Docker image using the container registry because it's already there, but guiding the user in that direction, because at the point where they are adding CI/CD or CI, they don't know about the container registry yet. They might not even know about containers yet. You learn that by doing it or by reading the docs, but it's like the endless loop. You need to know so many things to actually get starting to test your code or to actually see that it's building. And one of the CI/CD workshop exercises I keep using is I provide code to the user which is broken, and I ask them add CI/CD for Go using the templates and see what it does. And the error is actually like fixing a missing import, which is commented out for convenience. But like seeing them and say, okay, I can do that with my own code. Like having the example with Go, just add a CI/CD template on top of your own project. This is like the lightning bulb you want to see in the head of the users. And this should be as easy as possible, but also as convenient as possible, because if you catch the error, it should be hidden somewhere in the CI/CD job logs, and I don't want to navigate there. I want to immediately see what's wrong with the build. I want to see it in the merge request. I don't want to click on something. So like that, the feedback loop on the execution side, this goes into pipeline execution actually then. This also needs to get better, and I know that the team is working on that also. Like touches pipeline efficiency, pipeline monitoring, pipeline insights, because when users started their journey with CI, they also want to see what is happening. The pipeline editor provides you with a preview of how it looks like, but my vision or my idea would be like I also want to like simulate what is being executed. Like you simulate. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of a business process and monitoring, where you define a tree of dependencies more or less, and if you change something in the tree, like move one leaf to the right-hand side from the left and make it broken, does it affect the entire health state of the business process? And you can simulate what's happening. And this simulation type is something you could also provide to someone who is not familiar with the YAML configuration. They just see a pipeline, and then they say, if this stage or if this job is broken, I want to simulate and just make it red. What happens to the entire pipeline view? Or I want to say, hey, the duration is now 10 minutes or something else. How does this add up to the whole process? Is the pipeline timing out, or is there something else? So like the environment sandbox, and you can like, maybe it goes a little bit too deep into like chaos engineering your pipeline you are building. But guiding the user step by step there, I think is key. And with short iterations of not short, but doing it step by step in the product is also a good idea, because chaos engineering is like 1 year ahead or 3 years ahead somehow. But yeah, getting there with smaller steps would be a great idea.
Yeah, I think a lot of the frustration, not necessarily complexity, but the frustration with not just CI, but many other configuration methods is just how long the feedback cycle is, right? So if you have, I don't know, maybe 3-4 errors in your process where you have to fix that in order for your configuration to work, you might have the same number of errors, but if the feedback loop is much shorter, then you might fix all of those in 30 minutes instead of 2 hours, and that makes a lot of difference.
And regarding the first blog post, for example, which says it's super complex to get started with, one thing I struggled with, for example, using GitHub Actions the first time, was that I needed to define that the condition when to do something, because otherwise it doesn't do anything. And I was sitting there and said, I have no idea why should I be using that, or why should I be doing that? Where in contrast, GitLab CI runs everything when defined, which is one of the convenience things. The other one is, I don't understand why I need a checkout action in GitHub Actions. I have no idea, because I want, when I run a job, that the environment is prepared for that. I even maybe want to have, if I don't define anything, the all-in-one build image, like Gitpod, the workspace image, provides you with a Rust compiler, with whatever compiler, whatever is needed. I don't want to invest maybe I want to do that later on, but I want to build on best practices on a Docker or on a container, which has all the build tools installed for me. We provide that for several languages and also Terraform and stuff. But I think it's one of the key things will be, how much convenience do you provide for your users to keep them in your ecosystem? You won't earn money from that in I think maybe with special support or something, but in the end, it's I don't want to learn how I can configure Ccache with C++ to make my CI builds more effective. I need to do that, but it's super complicated, because there are 3 different ways to do it, and only one works in Docker and stuff like that. So as a developer, I needed to learn packaging, and I needed to learn containers, and I need to learn everything. But making all the steps in the first place as easy as possible, and not caring about how to build a Docker image. There are so many errors you can make.
Yeah.
It's when you're sitting there, and if you give me something which just works, and also says, hey, by the way, these are the best practices, and this is documented, and you can do this. It's like, oh, and I keep building on that, because my company says you cannot use the GitLab.com registry for your container images. You're in a DMZ. Please use your own, but I can use what's already there. The knowledge transfer is one key factor, I think.
Right. All right, Michael, thanks for that. I need to wrap up, but thank you for your contribution. And yeah, I'll share the link with the CI team. so they can be a part
Mhm.
of it. And yeah, I'm sure that we'll have more discussions like this in the future. So thanks for
Definitely.
joining in.
I'm always happy to share my thoughts and my visions and my ideas and contribute in that way. So looking forward to the next sessions.
All right. Good
Thank
to see
you.
you. Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.